Why muscle memory is destroying your race starts and what to do instead. Here's the thing nobody tells you. You've practiced 100 starts. You know your bite point. You've dialed in your RPM. But when those lights go out, you still get swallowed by the pack. Why? Because muscle memory is a lie, not the way you think it works. See, your brain doesn't care how many times you've practiced if you're doing it wrong. And here's the kicker. You can do 100 perfect race starts in the next 10 days without ever sitting in your car. No track time, no tire wear, no clutch abuse, just your mind. And I'm going to show you exactly how the fastest drivers are using this to gain positions before turn one. Stay with me.
Hey, if we haven't met already, I'm the digital avatar of Craig Muirhead, flow performance coach and founder of Camino Coaching. Whilst he's helping clients get faster on track, I'm here to break down the data, neuroscience, and exact systems that are getting results. Craig Muirhead reads every comment, so make sure you comment below.
Let me paint you a picture. It's Sunday night, you're driving home from the track. You qualified okay, maybe even qualified well. But the start, you got swallowed. Again. You gave it all away into turn one, again, and now you're sitting there thinking about all the places you lost. The positions you earned in qualifying, that vanished in 15 seconds. You know you've got the skills. You wouldn't be on the grid if you didn't. But something's missing. And that feeling in your gut, that's your potential rotting on the table. Here's what's actually happening. Think of your performance as a house, a structure. The roof is your desired outcome. Your podiums, your race wins, your top 10 finishes, whatever success looks like to you, that's the roof. But here's the problem, your roof is on the floor. And it's not because you're not skilled enough, it's because you don't have the pillars to hold it up. Most drivers think they have a technique problem. They think if they just nail the clutch release or find the perfect RPM, everything will click. Wrong, you have a structural problem, and I'm going to show you the 4 pillars that are missing from your house. Let me tell you what the old way looks like. You dread the start, you love racing, you love free practice, but when it comes to the start, you get a knot in your stomach. You're overthinking everything. How can I control this? How can I control that? You're stressed, high stress levels all weekend, not eating well, not sleeping well, and then what happens? You're disappointed. Again, because you lost all those places you earned in qualifying, and you feel like you're missing potential, like there's a better version of you trapped inside. Sound familiar? Now here's what most drivers do. They focus on the mechanics, throttle control, clutch release, getting off the line, and yes, those things matter. But that's not why you're getting swallowed by the pack. You want to know the real reason? You're thinking about the diesel generator. Let me explain. You're sitting on the grid, lights are about to go, and suddenly you remember the generator needs diesel when you get back to the garage. That's not performance thinking, that's distraction. And it happens because you don't have a clear goal. You don't have a system, you're winging it. And when you're winging it, that's where nerves come from. Because nerves are just your brain telling you're unprepared for the size of the challenge ahead. Here's what's happening in your brain. When you're stressed, your body releases hormones, cortisol, adrenaline. These chemicals are designed to help you survive, fight or flight, but they destroy performance. Because when those stress hormones flood your system, your brain shuts down the parts responsible for learning and flow. You can't create muscle memory at a race weekend. Your conscious mind is too busy overthinking, and nothing becomes instinctive. Think about it like this. Imagine you're taking a penalty kick in football. You've got terrible technique, but you rush it anyway. You think going faster will make it better? Does it? No, you don't improve. You just repeat the same bad technique at a higher speed. That's what most drivers do with race starts. They try to go fast, but their technique is wrong. So they never get better. I'll tell you how to fix this in a second. But first, you need to understand the structure. Remember that house analogy? Your roof is your results, but the roof needs pillars to hold it up. 4 pillars. If even one pillar is missing or weak, the roof crashes to the floor, and so does your performance. Over the last 9 seasons, working with hundreds of drivers, I've identified the 4 pillars that every consistent performer has, and I'm going to break them down for you. First pillar is mindset, and this starts with goal setting. Here's the thing, a clear goal changes your body language. It tells your brain what you're doing for the next 20 minutes. It increases your focus and it has you monitoring whether you're executing or not. Most drivers go into a race start without a goal. So they're waiting for gaps instead of creating them. They're victims of circumstance, waiting to see how the start goes and then deciding what to do. But when you set a clear goal, your attention follows. You don't get random thoughts. You don't think about the diesel generator. You're locked in. And here's the kicker. Your brain can only focus on one thing at a time. So when you give it a meaningful goal, it eliminates distractions. Now, most drivers never set goals, or they set them sometimes, but not consistently. And that's a gap. That's a weak pillar. And when that pillar is weak, your roof is on the floor. Second pillar is preparation. Your race starts long before the lights go out. Most drivers do some stretching. They warm up the body physically, but they don't activate the mind. And that's a problem, because when you're not mentally prepared, that's when nerves show up. You start thinking, wouldn't it be terrible if this happened? Wouldn't it be terrible if there's a crash in turn one? All fantasy, all negative, because you feel unprepared. And then there's the downtime, scrolling through your phone, picking up work emails between sessions, chatting with friends, watching other races to fill the time. And then, suddenly, oh, hang on, I'm out in 15 minutes. If you felt unprepared when race time hits, here's what happens. You run out of laps. You're in free practice or qualifying. You're just getting up to speed. And the checkered flag comes out. You feel like if they gave you another 10 minutes, you'd jump 6 or 8 places, but they don't. And you drive home disappointed. Why? Because you weren't switched on mentally. You weren't warmed up. It took you the whole session to finally engage. Your fastest reaction times come from both the body and the mind being switched on. Look at any athlete, any sports team. They're warming up mentally and physically because reaction time requires both. So do you have a pre-race system that activates your mind? A way to switch from spectator mode to performer mode? Most drivers don't. That's another gap, another weak pillar. Now, before I show you the next 2 pillars, let me say this. If you're feeling gaps in your structure right now, if you're realizing your pillars are weak, that's okay, because recognizing the gap is the first step. And if you want to know exactly where your gaps are, if you want a full breakdown of your 4 pillars and a personalized roadmap to fix them, that's why I created the Mental Skills and Flow Performance Group. This group is your go-to hub for expert advice, proven strategies, and support to unlock peak performance through mental skills training and the flow state. Join to boost focus, build confidence. The link is in the description. Let's get back to it. Third pillar is flow. This is where technique comes in, but not the way you think. See, muscle memory doesn't come from your muscles. It comes from your brain, and you cannot create muscle memory at a race weekend. Let me say that again. You cannot create muscle memory at a race weekend. You need time away from the race weekend to put in the practice, so it becomes instinctive, so you don't have to think about it. When you're nervous about a wheel spin, nervous about the clutch bite, nervous about turn one, you're thinking with your conscious mind. And that's where stress comes from. Stress hormones flood your system, and you're miles away from peak performance. So what do? You've got to slow it down, get deliberates in your practice, control all the aspects, rev range, clutch release, and do it perfect at a slower speed first. Then you can do it faster. Remember that penalty kick analogy? If you rush it with bad technique, you don't get better. You just repeat bad technique faster. So slow it down, get it perfect, then speed it up. That's how you build muscle memory. Now here's where it gets interesting. Break it into phases. Your brain needs to recognize exactly what you're trying to achieve. Get that correct. Then clutch release and throttle control, then acceleration and balance. Break it down into bite-sized chunks so you can analyze which part you're good at and which part you're not. Maybe you're but terrible at the initial acceleration after you release the clutch. Now you know what to work on. And here's the game changer. Visualization and mental rehearsal. Your brain can't tell the difference between you perfectly imagining a start and you actually doing it. If you're fully immersed in the details, it fires the same neural pathways. So imagine this. You've got a race weekend coming up in 10 days. What if you visualized 100 perfect starts between now and Friday? How good would your race start be? I'll tell you, it would be mint, because you're training your brain without ever touching the car. No day off work, no track fees, no set of tires, no clutch wear, just deep immersive practice in your mind, and it makes your muscle memory stronger, way stronger. I've got drivers in my training program doing this. They say their strength is now race starts. Why? Because the start sets the tone, and they don't change their routine. They've got a process, and they stick to it every single time. Even when other cars are screaming around them on the grid, they focus on their process, and that's the key. Repetition. Once you've perfected your process, you stick to it. You don't deviate. Even if you get a bad start, you're still making progress on your system because you're gathering data. But if you change it every time, if you're waiting until 4,000 RPM one time and 5,500 the next, you'll never know what works. So perfect your theory, slow it down, break it into phases, mentally rehearse it and repeat it over and over until it's muscle memory. Pillar 4 is feedback, and this is essential because feedback eliminates guesswork. You're not relying on feeling alone. Feedback eliminates inconsistency. It identifies your strengths and weaknesses. You can pinpoint exactly what needs improving instead of repeating the same mistakes. And you can track progress over time. Performance isn't instant, it's developed. And when you use the correct feedback, you can tweak what you need to be stronger and more consistent. So how do you get feedback on race starts? Video analysis, a driver coach, a GoPro, or even better, a visor cam, so you can see the revs at the exact point you release the clutch. It's a really good way to analyze what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. If you've got telemetry on your car, you can see the actual launch times, chart your progress. If you don't have telemetry, you can buy bolt-on GPS devices that do a similar job for a couple $100. And from that feedback, you make small adjustments. Even if you nail the whole shot, there's something to learn, something to adapt, something to develop, to make you more consistent, to make you perform stronger. So do you have a system that gives you feedback on your performance, your focus, your confidence, your consistency? Most drivers don't. That's another gap, another weak pillar. Now let's talk about turn 1, because this is where most drivers surrender everything they gained from a good start. They're hesitant. They're worried about getting caught up with other cars, so they give it all away. Think about risk versus reward. Everyone else is probably thinking the exact same thing. So if you have the opportunity, go for it, but don't let everything ride on turn 1. When you're at the front, you can control what you're doing. But when you're in the middle of the pack, you've got to be aware of the other cars around you. The chances of getting in a mishap are way higher if you're in the back. And here's the thing, people call champions lucky. You know, they had a lot of luck on their side this season, but actually you create your own luck in racing. If you qualify well, you're at the front. You get a good start. You spend 7, 10, 12 races a year in far less chaotic air than the guys coming from 11th or 15th or 18th. So the way to win a championship, be a consistent good qualifier and be a consistent good starter, because then you're racing with a better caliber of driver alongside you. If you're stuck in the midfield, you've got inconsistency, and that makes it way harder to win a championship. Now, what if you don't get a good start? What do? Don't panic. That doesn't mean you give up, but you need to let the race calm down. And more importantly, you need to calm yourself down. Usually when you have a bad start, you're frantic, you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you're thinking, this isn't going well. But the most important thing is to put yourself back into a position where you're okay. Accept what's happened. You can't change it. But now your focus needs to be on making up places, on improving, on getting back to where you want to be. And here's the problem. A lot of drivers beat themselves up for the next 4 laps. They got a bad start, so they put so much pressure on themselves. They're chastising themselves instead of going, right, so what's my job now? And this goes back to goal setting. The race has 3 parts, the start, the middle, the end. You need goals for each stage. You can't still be upset about the start when you're into lap 4. By then, you should have a brand new goal. You should have a new goal by the end of lap 1, so you're working your way forward. But a lot of drivers put themselves under pressure. They don't execute. And then they put themselves into a space where they're chastising themselves. And that's not a good place for performance. Some drivers feel the race doesn't actually start until after turn one. So they struggle with turn one and they're sacrificing a lot of performance. They've got to make up so much time afterwards to get back to where their pace actually matches. Here are the common mistakes drivers make in turn one. They look down only a few feet ahead of their car, looking for other wheels, waiting for the opportunity to tip in. And that causes a big problem. They're waiting for gaps instead of creating opportunities. They're too polite, giving up positions. After you, after you, after you. And by the end of the corner, they've given away places. So you need to change that whole outlook, turn all those things around. So here's the new way. Imagine leaving the race weekend every Sunday night feeling this. No other driver in this car, on this track, in these conditions, with this budget, could have performed better than I did. Win, lose, or draw. You delivered your absolute best. How would that change how you feel about your racing? It would feel good, because if you've given it your absolute best, it's the best feeling in the world, regardless of whether you get a plastic trophy or a stainless steel trophy. When you put your absolute best in, you feel satisfied, you feel content, your conscience is clean, you're driving away Sunday night going, nobody could have done better than I did today with the circumstances I've got. That's what we're striving to deliver. That's what we're striving to get you to. And when you're consistently performing at your best, results improve, doors open with new opportunities. People want you involved in other things because they like the way you're performing. And your confidence soars, which is what it's all about. Confidence comes from evidence. And when you have a process, when you have a system, you build that evidence. So to leave on Sunday feeling you're performing at your absolute best, you need the 4 pillars: mindset, preparation, flow, feedback. With those 4 pillars in place, you're able to consistently perform at your best. And when those pillars are strong, they hold up the roof. Your roof rises, your performance rises, your feeling rises, what you feel is possible rises. So where are you right now? If you found gaps in your process, if you've been looking at those 4 pillars and you found yourself in a space where your roof is on the floor, what you've got is a gap. A gap between where you currently are in these key areas and where you need to be. When the pillars are full and strong, they hold up the roof. They generate your performance. So you've got to recognize those gaps and then go to work creating a process and a structure that fills them. And once you fill them, you raise the roof. Now you can go ahead and try to figure out these aspects and these gaps alone, or you can have us help you fast track that process. If you want help with the full process, join the free Podium Contenders Blueprint training. The link in the description. You'll get all the video notes from there, plus access to our community of racers who are crushing it on track. Click on the link and let's raise your roof. Let's get your performance where it needs to be, because you've got the skills, you just need the structure. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.